fellow students, viewers, we are all welcome again into another episode of our lectures on history. For some time we have been quiet, but we are resuming back to our lectures. Today we will be working on the Second World War in world history. As A-level student writing advanced level, we know that section Z in history, we have to answer a question there, and in that section Z, we have the League of Nations and Collective Security, which is the first topic. After that, we enter into the Second World War. And in this topic that we'll be working on it as A-level student, there are three key areas that we need to know that the GCE board used to set questions in the Second World War. We have the causes of the war, that after explanation, we are going to look at the various ways through which questions can be asked in these courses. After that, we look at the aftermath or the repercussions or the consequences or the impact of the Second World War that we are going to see in our subsequent lectures. And the last part of this topic will be the responsibilities of the Western democracies and the axis towards the outbreak of the Second World War. Now, the Second World War, it was a global confrontation that was fought all over the world from the 1st of September 1939 right up to August 1945. This war was fought by two camps. These camps were the Allies. We have the Allies, which we could call them the Western democracies. The Allies, they were Britain, there was France, there was USA, and Russia. And then we have the Axis powers. These Axis powers, we have Germany, Italy, and Japan. So these were the two camps that were involved in the Second World War. The war was fought in the Pacific, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, and different parts of the world. The question we should ask ourselves, what were the reasons for the outbreak of the Second World War? The immediate cause of the war was German attack on Poland. The immediate cause or the main reason for the outbreak of the Second World War was the fact that Germany has attacked Poland on the 1st of September 1939. What happened? When we look at the First World War, we discovered that the war came to an end and the Treaty of Versailles was signed against Germany as the loser. Now, under the Treaty of Versailles, some German lands were seized and given to certain European nations to sanction Germany for being the cause for the outbreak of the First World War. Example, we can talk about Ukraine and Normandy. They were German territories that were seized and given to Belgium. We have Upper Silesia was given to Poland. We have the Danzig and Polish corridor. Polish corridor, we can call it West Prussia and Posen. West Prussia and Posen. They were all German lands that were seized and given to Poland under the Treaty of Versailles. Now, when Adolf Hitler rose to power in 1933 in Germany, Hitler saw that the Treaty of Versailles against Germany was unjust and too harsh, and so Hitler has the notion to rewrite the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. So Hitler began to attack European nations in order to reclaim back the land that Germany has lost to these countries. And when Adolf Hitler started attacking these nations, Britain and France stayed mute. They never reacted because they have come out with a policy of appeasement. So Germany has to start attacking nations. Germany attacked France to take back Alsace and Lorraine. Germany attacked Austria, and Germany attacked Czechoslovakia because he needed to take Sudetenland, which was another German land that was seized at the end of the First World War and given to Sudetenland was seized and given to Czechoslovakia. So Adolf Hitler, when he attacked Czechoslovakia in 1938, Hitler called a conference in Munich in Germany, which was attended by the British Prime Minister David Chamberlain and the French Prime Minister Edouard Daladier. In the Munich conference, Adolf Hitler made it clear that the demand for Sudetenland is German land, that was seized at the end of the First World War and given to Czechoslovakia, which was a newly created nation in Europe at the end of the war. So Hitler made it clear that the demand for Sudetenland was his last territorial demand in Europe. That means that at the end, if they give him Sudetenland, he was never going to demand for any other land in Europe. Neville Chamberlain even described the Munich Agreement as a peace with honors, because at the end of the conference, they knew that peace was going to restore. Hitler was going to stop aggressive nations in Europe. But Hitler, being a person who his appetite for territories was never saturated, Hitler again made the mistake of attacking Poland on the 1st of September 1939 because he needed to take back Danzig and Polish corridor. We call Polish corridor West Prussia and Posen. Now, when Hitler attacked Poland, Neville Chamberlain was not happy. He became very angry because he has pleased Hitler by giving him the desires of Hitler, and Hitler even made it clear that if they give him Sudetenland in 1938, he was never going to demand for any other land. But 2 months after, in 1939, Hitler went and attacked Poland in order to take this land. When Hitler attacked Poland, Neville Chamberlain could not bear it any longer because he has appeased Hitler from the 1930s, given the desires or the concessions of Adolf Hitler. And when he could not bear it, on the 3rd of September 1939, in the British House of Commons, Neville Chamberlain made it clear that all what I have worked for, believed on, throughout my entire public life has been crushed to ruins. And so, this country is at war with Germany. He was referring to the policy of appeasement that he has worked for it to preserve war, but Germany would not allow the policy war. So he declared war against Germany because in 1934, Neville Chamberlain of Britain signed an agreement to give protection to Poland. So when Germany attacked Poland, Neville Chamberlain and Britain, they will not stay quiet. So when they attacked Germany on that 10th of September 1939 at 11:15 a.m., that very day at 5 p.m., France waged a war also against Germany, and it led to the outbreak of the Second World War. That was the immediate cause of the Second World War, German attack on Poland. Now, the second reason for the outbreak of the Second World War is when we talk about the Anglo-French policy of appeasement. Now, at the end of the First World War, Britain and France, they had suffered a lot of devastation at the end of the First World War. So they never wanted another war because at the end of the First World War, they were so much involved in post-war reconstruction. And to avoid a war, Neville Chamberlain came out with a policy of appeasement. Appeasement means to grant the desires of the aggressors, to grant concessions to aggressors. Who were aggressors? Aggressors were people who rose to power in Europe and Southeast Asia in the 1930s in order to seize territories that belongs to them or which does not even belong to them. And who were these aggressors? We have Benito Mussolini. Hitler, with the other aggressors, came up and they started aggressing nations in Europe and Southeast Asia. Now, Britain and France, being afraid of a war, came out with appeasement. Now, how did appeasement contributed to the outbreak of the Second World War? This policy was a policy that contributed to the outbreak of the Second World War because the policy allowed, it made the aggressors' desire for colonies never to come to an end. Their desire for territories was limitless. They always wanted more because they knew that when they would ask, they would give because of what? Appeasement. Again, appeasement enabled the aggressors to take a lot of time and build themselves and prepare themselves militarily because Britain and France were not checking their armament because they wanted to prevent the war. It now gave room to these aggressors to continue to build weapons. And Britain and France could not check these aggressors because they have appeased them and given them a lot of time to build weapons, and they become very powerful that the British and the French could not prevent them. So, appeasement contributed to the outbreak of the Second World War because it allowed the aggressors to have unwetted appetite for territories. It gave the aggressors the power to build weapons. It made Britain and France not to be able to check the aggressiveness of the aggressor, And when the aggressors now discover they have built so much weapon that they contest with Britain and France, they have now to start aggressive nation. So appeasement contributed to the outbreak of the Second World War because we make the aggressors to continue to become very powerful, and they have to start attacking nations in the world. Again, another cause of the war was the American policy of isolationism. Isolationism was American policy which was introduced by the American president called Warren Harding, which was purposely to make Americans stay out of world politics. At the end of the First World War, America had the idea that they never wanted to be involved in world affairs, to wanted to be neutral from world politics, and by so doing, they came out with the policy of isolationism to stay out of European affairs and world politics. How now did this American policy of isolationism lead to the outbreak of the Second World War? America being a great nation, though America was the person who introduced the idea of the League of Nations by WWII, America was not present in the League of Nations. Her absence in the League of Nations made the League of Nations morally weak, economically weak, and militarily weak. At least isolationism made America not to be a member of the League. And since America was not a member of the League of Nations, the League of Nations became weak. Again, isolationism made Japan to come out with a policy of expansionism or co-prosperity sphere in Southeast Asia, which means because America was not longer involved in world politics, to check Japanese aggressiveness in Southeast Asia, Japan now has the courage to go and attack China in the Manchuria crisis of 1931 to 1935, where Japan invaded the Chinese city of Manchuria and changed it to Manchukuo. So the absence of America in world politics gave Japan the courage to attack China. As if that was not enough, isolationism again encouraged Italy to go and attack Abyssinia, because when Japan invaded China and America stayed mute, and Italy has to copy the example of Japan by attacking in Abyssinia or Ethiopia in October 1935, because Italy knew America is not in world politics. America was a great nation that could intervene and check the excesses of these aggressors. Then, because of isolationism, America has to stay mute, and the aggressors now has to feel free to express their aggressive tendencies. And then again, America in isolationism could not collaborate with Britain and France in Europe so that they should be able to check German aggressiveness in Europe. We know Hitler rose to power, and in his ideology, he wanted to rewrite the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. And from 1933 right up to 1939, Adolf Hitler carried out acts of aggressiveness that led to the outbreak of the Second World War. If America was involved in world politics, she would have collaborated with Britain and France, who were weak at the end of the First World War, so that the three of them should check German aggressiveness in Europe. But because of isolationism, America has to stay mute, and the aggressors now have powers to do whatsoever that they do, which led to the outbreak of the Second World War. We move forward to look at another reason for the outbreak of the Second World War. We talk about the fear of communism. What is communism? Communism was an ideology that was introduced in Russia by the Bolsheviks. When we talk about the Bolsheviks, they were Leon Trotsky and Joseph Lenin. These were people introduced, we call them the apostles of communism in 1917 in Russia. They overthrew the government of Tsar Alexander, who practices capitalism, and introduced communism. Now, communism was an ideology where the Russians felt that they should commune together, they should socialize together. As we were discussing on communism, and we said this was an ideology that was introduced in Russia by the Bolsheviks. When we talk about Bolsheviks, We are talking about people overthrow the capitalist regime on Tsar and Nicholas II and introduce communism, and we have Lenin and Leon Trotsky. Those were the people that introduced communism in Russia in 1917. In 1917, when this communism was introduced in Russia, the Western democrats, Britain and France, they practiced capitalism. And when capitalism was being practiced by Britain and France, it contradicted communism. Britain and France, they have never collaborated with Russia because Russia has the policy of communism while they practice capitalism. Now, Russia joined the League of Nations in September 1989, and when Russia joined the League of Nations in September 1989, Britain and France could not collaborate with Russia so that they uphold collective security system together. Why? Because Britain and France were afraid that Russia was going to spread communism in the world. Since the apostles of communism, Leon Trotsky and Stalin and Lenin, they had the notion that their ideology should be spread in other parts of the world. Britain and France, being capitalist nations, they refused to collaborate together with Russia as a member of the League of Nations so that they should uphold collective security and check the excesses of the aggressors. And by so doing, Britain and France preferred to use the policy of appeasement rather than collaborating with Russia to uphold collective security. And because of that, it made the League of Nations weak. The League of Nations was weak because Britain and France, they could not make the League powerful. Since Russia was a member of the League of Nations, but because of conflicting ideologies between Britain and France and Russia, these were capitalism and communism. These conflicting ideologies made the League of Nations to become weak, and the outbreak of the Second World War was inevitable because of fear of communism. Who were those who were afraid of communism? Britain and France. They wanted the capitalism to be spread in different parts of the world. But Russia wanted communism, and because of that, they could not come to a compromise to work together and check the aggressors. So it led to the outbreak of the Second World War. The next one, we talk about the rise and activities of aggressors. The Second World War was caused again by the activities of these aggressors. And we have said these aggressors, we have Benito Mussolini of Italy. Benito Mussolini of Italy. We have Adolf Hitler of Germany. Adolf Hitler of Germany. And General Tojo, General Hitike Tojo, who led the Japanese militaries. These were the aggressors prospered in Europe and Southeast Asia in the 1930s, and their activities led to the outbreak of the Second World War. If we look at the activities of Japan, Japan showed the militaries have a policy of expansionism in Southeast Asia. Expansionism means that they wanted to expand their borders, and by so doing, they have to start aggressing other nations in Southeast Asia. Now, Japan in 1931 attacked the Chinese city of Manchuria. Through their expansionism, Japan invaded Manchuria and changed it to Manchukuo in 1983. The League of Nations intervened, but Japan instead withdrew from the League of Nations. Another aggressor that rose to power in the 1930s was Benito Mussolini of Italy. When Japan invaded China in 1981, Benito Mussolini copied the example because the League of Nations was a toothless bulldog that could only bite back in the 1920s. But since he could not bite Japan in the 1930s, Mussolini copied the example and attacked Abyssinia or Ethiopia. Again, Germany on her part, also under Adolf Hitler, also did a lot of things that led to the outbreak of the Second World War. If we look at Hitler's policies, in 1933, Adolf Hitler withdrew Germany from the League of Nations. On the 3rd of October 1933, in the Geneva Disarmament Conference, where they asked France to disarm its soldiers, France said, no, I needed security before disarmament. They said, France, you must disarm before we give you security. France said, I'm not disarming. And the Hitler got annoyed because Germany in 1919 has accepted to disarm itself to 500,000 soldiers. So 100,000 soldiers. When it comes to the turn of France, France refused to disarm. So Hitler left the Geneva Disarmament Conference because of anger that France refused to disarm. And in 1983, Adolf Hitler withdrew Germany from the League of Nations. As if that was not enough, in 1934, Hitler stationed German troops at Brenner Pass, where Hitler wanted to annex Austria and start the union between Germany and Austria, which was called Anschluss. That was banned at the end of the First World War. As if that was not enough for Hitler, in 1935, Hitler started rearmament in Europe by building military equipment. On the 7th of March 1936, Adolf Hitler recruited 555,000 soldiers and took them to the Rhineland for military training. Hitler had annexed Austria in 1938, annexed Czechoslovakia in 1938 and 1939, and when he attacked Poland in 1939, led to the outbreak of the Second World War. So we said aggressors and their activities contributed to the outbreak of the Second World War, and we have mentioned the three aggressors. We move forward to look at the return to power politics in Europe. Another reason for the outbreak of the Second World War was the formation of alliances, or what we call power politics in Europe. By 1936, alliances again returned back in Europe. These alliances started in 1936 when Germany met Italy and they formed what we call the Rome-Berlin axis in 1936. Still in 1936, Germany left and met Japan in 1936. They formed what we call the Anti-Comintern Pact, Anti-Comintern, which was to check communism in Russia. Germany and Japan, they had anti-Comintern in 1986, and the purpose was to check communism in Russia. In 1987, Italy left the League of Nations and joined the anti-Comintern Pact, and they changed it to Rome, Berlin. Rome, Berlin, Tokyo axis in 1987. And by 1938, the Rome-Berlin Tokyo axis was changed to the Pact of Steel. Pact of Steel of the theory, which means an attack on one means an attack on all. So under the power politics in Europe, we have the Rome-Berlin axis, we have the anti-Comintern Pact, we have the Rome-Berlin Tokyo axis, and we have the Pact of Steel. How they contributed to the outbreak of the Second World War. If they have the idea that an attack on one means an attack on all, definitely if Britain and France are attacking Germany in September 1939, obviously Italy and Japan should support Germany, and that was what happened. The next reason, we talk about the weaknesses of the League of Nations. The League of Nations, as we have all seen, it was an international organization that was formed in 1919. The idea was introduced by President Woodrow Wilson of America. While coming into the Paris Peace Settlement, Woodrow Wilson came with 14-point agenda, and the last of this 14 points was the formation of an international organization that will maintain peace in the world through collective efforts. The League of Nations was formed in 1919, but inaugurated on the 10th of January 1920. When the League of Nations was formed, the League of Nations had its weaknesses that could not let to prevent the outbreak of the Second World War. The first weakness was that America was not a member of the League of Nations. It gave the League of Nations morally weak, financially weak, and militarily weak. As if that was not enough, the League of Nations was an organization that never had a standing army on its own. It made the League of Nations weak. The League of Nations, again, it has principles of unanimous agreement, unanimity, where all members of the General Assembly must accept before the League will take an action against an aggressor. So this made the League of Nations weak to be able to check the aggressiveness of the aggressors. And the in and out movement of members of the League of Nations, it shows that it was not a stable organization. You want to look at the in and out movement of the League of Nations, we discover that Germany joined the League of Nations in 1925 after after signing the Locarno Treaty in Switzerland, Germany joined the League of Nations. But by 1933, Hitler left the League of Nations. Russia called the League of Nations when it was formed that it was a lion, a den of thieves. But in 1939, Russia joined the League in 1984 and withdrew in 1989. Italy joined the League when it was formed and withdrew in 1987. So we discovered that the League of Nations it was not stable because there was in and out movement of member states. It made the League of Nations very weak to be able to stop aggressors from causing the outbreak of the Second World War. Lastly, we can look at the errors or the flaws of the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles had its weaknesses, or let's look at it in general perspective, the Paris Peace Settlement that led to the signing of treaties against the losers of the First World War had its weaknesses. We have the Treaty of Versailles that was signed against Germany. We have the Treaty of Saint-Germain that was signed against Austria. We have the Treaty of Sèvres and Lausanne against Turkey. We have the Treaty of Neuilly against Bulgaria and the Treaty of Trianon against Hungary. All these treaties that were signed against the European nations had their own weaknesses, especially the Treaty of Versailles that was signed on the 28th of June 1919, which was too harsh and unjust to Germany. The Germans saw the Treaty of Versailles as a bad treaty. To the Germans, a treaty that was to maintain peace or to end wars should not be too harsh on a particular party. And so, Germans looked at the Treaty of Versailles and they believed they were out to revenge. Adolf Hitler has the notion that he was going to rewrite the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. As well as we have Kaiser Wilhelm who was on exile, who read the terms of the Treaty of Versailles and made it clear a war to end wars as a result of a peace to end peace. What was he saying? That the Treaty of Versailles that was intended to end wars in the world has now instead caused war because God the German annoyed and the German will start another war and the German finally started the outbreak of the Second World War. Those are the causes of the outbreak of the Second World War. We'll come back again now and look at how questions can be framed for those who are writing about the world under these causes and how you can approach them before we move to the other sections.